Hey guys, Ryan Gill here with Hunt Primitive, where we entertain, educate, and inspire. And today we are focusing more on educating and inspiring. So if you are new to my channel, do please consider subscribing and following along. But as the title indicates, we are focusing on 5 tips to becoming a better bow hunter. Now specifically, I'm a primitive bow hunter, and if you follow my channel, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but I'm hoping that there are a bunch of you that have never been to my channel before that have clicked on this, that want to learn how to be a better bow hunter. But I am specifically a primitive bow hunter, meaning I hunt with primitive bows, arrows, and stone points, as well as atlatls. So again, if this is your first time, check out some of my other videos, because you can see that we're doing lots of deer and pig and elk and gator and hog, everything with primitive bows, arrows, atlatls, and stone points. So we've got some cool stuff going on. But even if you are not a primitive bow hunter and you are a modern bow hunter, a lot of this stuff is going to apply to you as well. So you could be a modern compound hunter, recurve hunter, crossbow hunter, potentially even a rifle hunter, quite honestly. So you got to figure, if I've got, I think, 42 big game animals killed at this point with primitive, like sticks and rocks. So you got to figure, if I figured out how to kill dozens upon dozens of animals with sticks and rocks, I've kind of got a good handle on what I'm doing at this point. And I know that I can give you some tips on how to get close, be accurate, make good kills. Imagine how many that would be if I was hunting with modern compound bows. It would be insane. I'd probably quit hunting. It just wouldn't be fun anymore. So tip number 1 on this to becoming a better bow hunter, specifically, again, primitive bow hunter, but apply it if you're still a modern bow hunter, is allocation of time. And what I mean by that is that if you want to be a bow hunter, you have to put the time in. So to sit back and watch YouTube videos is great. You're going to learn a lot, especially from people like my channel and other bow hunters along the way. But every day past that you're not in the woods trying to gain experience and hunt is a day too late. The allocation of time is irreplaceable. There is no replacement at all for the time spent in the woods. You will learn so much by watching animal behavior, by learning from your mistakes and your failures, and that's what a lot of it is you're going to go out, you're going to spend a lot of time, you're going to fail a lot, but all of that is going to eventually stack up pretty high, where every time, you know, a deer spooks off, you say, well, I learned something today, or I didn't get a shot, but I should have maybe been set up over there, maybe I would have got a shot. But those things will stack up over time, and you'll gain experience just from being in the woods, and that will make you more successful. You will be a better bow hunter because you will start to intuitively know where to set up, what the deer's behavior looks like, what, you know, the pig's behavior look, what can you get away with, what can you not get away with. And that stuff I can teach you, I can show you, but until you experience it for yourself, you're simply never going to be able to truly grasp it. So the allocation of time, putting in the time, learning all of this stuff for yourself, is the number 1 answer, the number 1 tip that I can give you. And really it's an answer. It's probably the biggest answer out of all of this, except for maybe the last answer, maybe the 5th tip could potentially be the biggest tip. But you can't skip to it, because all of all the stuff that I'm going to talk about there won't make as much sense unless you hear the next tip. So I hate to play that game, say like, oh, skip ahead to the end and learn how to do it, because I want you to hang out. But honestly, it won't make sense if you just skip ahead. So tip number 2, refine your gear. If you're a modern bow hunter, you probably don't have to worry about that too awful much, because quite honestly, whatever you buy off the shelf, it's all been tested. It all works. Just put it together. Go out and practice. It all kills deer just as dead. What broadhead is the best? What arrow is the best? What bow? It doesn't matter. They all kill deer just as dead. You got to remember, I'm killing animals with sticks and rocks. If you're buying it from a store and it's wrapped in plastic and it's modern, even if it's a laminated recurve bow and you're shooting wood arrows and glue on broadhead points, it's all good. All of it. You'll kill deer with every component out there, almost, probably. There's probably some junk, but realistically, you're going to kill deer with anything. But if you're a primitive hunter, by refining your gear, is you need to make sure your arrows are flying absolutely perfectly straight when you shoot them. Your bow needs to be of heavy enough poundage. Your arrow points need to be very, very steep in tip geometry and actually in edge geometry as well. They need to be very, very sharp if you're shooting stone points. Shooting clunky points isn't going to do you any favors. You're not going to penetrate really well. And as much as you can refine your gear and stack the chips in your favor, the better off you're really going to be, because the last thing you want to do is take gear out that you're not confident with, or that even specifically other people like me are basically saying that's probably not a good idea to hunt with because we're just relying on our own experience. And that would be like really blunted stone points and arrows that fly really wonky, or lighter poundage bows like 35 pounds, that kind of stuff. Well, just because the state law says that it's okay doesn't mean that it's really going to work as well with stone points as you think it's going to. That kind of stuff, if you go out and you have a bad experience, you're less likely to continue to hunt with primitive equipment in the future, or bow hunt in general. So having a bad experience through gear, you know, let alone not even being related to the gear, but if you shoot an animal and you don't recover it, that's going to change your mindset and you're going to want to quit. You're not going to want to do this anymore. So refine your gear. Make sure that it is the best it can possibly be. And that's what my channel here is all about, especially on many of our other videos that we do teaching people about primitive bows and strings and arrow points, and like there's so much information on my site that I just give to everybody because I want your gear to be super refined. Tip number 3 is patience. That's both patience in the woods while you're hunting. You need to simply be patient, and if the animal is going and it's too far away, chances are, especially if you are hunting in a tree stand, you're probably not going to be able to get out of the tree stand and go pursue that animal and kill it. And I say that, and then the very first deer that I ever killed with a primitive bow, I was hunting in a tree stand. The deer was too far. I got out, stalked it, and killed it. But then, do as I say, not as I do, right? Your chances of that happening are relatively slim. The best thing you can do is, you ever be in the woods and you're standing against a tree, even if you're hunting on the ground or in a tree stand, and you're like, okay, I'm sitting here and I'm waiting, and now all of a sudden there's a tree over there that looks like that's probably a much better tree. I should be there. And then you get down and you go over to that tree and you're monkeying around. Well, you're goofing around, and what you should be doing is just being patient, stay where you're at. And even if the deer doesn't come by you, you're going to watch and see what happens, because the deer patterning may be over there too far. Maybe you're not set up in a good spot, but if you're patient and not trying to get the kill on the first night, sometimes you can watch where the deer are patterning just by being in the woods. And as a few nights go by, okay, I've consistently watched, you know, deer walk by 5 out of 10 nights, and if I was set up right there, I could kill them. That's when you go set up over there. So there's an observation period in this as well when you go out in the woods. Just because you see one deer walk by on that trail that's 50 yards away doesn't mean the next night you should sit there, especially if you put in some time at all, scouted your area, and you think that your spot's good. Just because you see a deer go somewhere else doesn't mean you should uproot and go, because next thing you know, tomorrow night you're going to sit over there and you're going to watch him walk right down the trail that you were sitting on. So show some patience in the hunt. Give it a little bit of time and observe. That's one of the best things that you can possibly do. Now, the other side of patience is learning to wait for the right shot. So how many times, I know when I was younger, I did the same thing, and I've hunted with novice hunters as well, is almost as soon as they see the animal, I mean, they are ready, we're drawing our bow, we're on this thing, animal could be 80 yards out, facing you, horrible shot, and people are slinging arrows. Like, I've seen that. So, like, as soon as they see the deer, they're shooting, and I've seen it with rifle hunters too. The second they see the deer, they're on it, and the trigger's pulled so fast. Be patient and calm down. And the longer that you let that animal just be there, you calm yourself down, let the animal come closer, present the right shot, you're gonna be more successful. But I've seen it in my youth way too much. Even when I had a deer coming in, it could be coming to me, could be coming straight in, and it'd be at like 20 yards, and I'd be like, well, I can shoot 20 yards. And all of a sudden I have a shot, and I'm like, well, I mean, it's quartering towards me and it's really bad, but maybe if I can thread that needle like right through here perfectly, I'll be able to kill it. Maybe I'll just get lucky. And next thing you know, you're slinging arrows at something 20 yards quartering to you. And quite honestly, it almost never works out. I mean, once in a while it can work out on a fluke, and somebody's going to say, well, yeah, I shoot him. Of course, the more you do this, the more you will understand. If you are patient and wait for the right shot, wait till that animal is completely broadside, slightly quartering away. Sure, you may not get the shot, but your recovery rate on animals is going to be so much higher. So many times I've heard stories, not only from myself in the younger years, but other hunters that are, that deer was out there at 40 yards and I shot at it. Even with a compound bow specifically, a guy once told me, he said, I shot, it was through the trees, but I could see it. And so at 40 yards I shot, my arrow hit and went through all the trees and I missed it. And then the buck it was such a big buck though, I couldn't let it go. So then after he shoots it and his arrow bounces off everything, he says, well, the deer wasn't really spooked and it only ran back like another 20 yards and it just stood there. So now it's at 60 yards. And he's like, but this time it was more open, but it's alert, it's standing around. So he wings another one at it. And he's like, I hit it that time. I hit it, I hit it a bit back, and immediately was off looking at it, jumped that deer, and it ran for miles, never saw it, never recovered it because there was no patience exhibited. Wait for the deer to come in very close, present the right shot, take the right shot, be patient, wait till everything's aligned. That is a huge, huge help in being a better and more successful bow hunter. Tip number 4 is covering ground. And what I mean by cover ground is 2 different things. If you're hunting spot and stalk, there are times in which you are going to need to cover a phenomenal amount of ground to get in front of animals. So we like to think that when we're bow hunting, we walk through the woods really, really slow. I'm going to take a step, every 20 seconds. Like I am frozen and I move so slow so animals never see me. Take a step and then I'm going to look. And I'm going to take an hour to move 10 yards. Like I've heard that a lot. And honestly, I fell into that trap many years ago as well. It doesn't work. What you're doing is you're still hunting. You're trying to hunt in one particular spot, but instead of doing it, you're just moving really slow. So it doesn't work. If you're spot and stalk hunting, you have to get out, cover ground, try to spot animals. And that's a game all in itself, and it's tough, especially with deer, but you can do it. We cover ground fast. My buddy Vaston Hall and I, one of the first things that I was drawn to hunting with him, I went down to hunt with him on his invite, and he starts covering ground so fast I can hardly keep up, and I walk pretty fast whenever I hunt, and it is amazing how fast we will walk and then slam on the brakes because we see something and we happen to see it before it saw us. And we do that and we get on game all the time. It's a little bit tougher to do on public land because you can end up stumbling into a whole lot of other people. But one of the tricks to that is if you are hunting public land is you just simply walk the roads. If somebody's set up on the road, quite honestly, they deserve to be walked up on. But you can walk these roads really fast and catch animals either crossing the road or you can hear them just off the side of the road. And I have killed animals on public land simply by walking the roads really fast, especially if you're talking about dirt roads, sandy roads, grassy roads that are relatively quiet. Cover ground fast. Now, if you're deer hunting and you're going to be set up in a tree stand or in a ground blind or something like that, covering ground doesn't mean during the hunt, that means in your scouting. Don't stop the very first place that you see and say, this is a great spot, there's deer tracks everywhere, and I'm going to hunt here. Go in, scout ahead of time, and cover a lot of ground. You can get caught up into walking into an area and saying, this looks like a good area. Now let me spend 15 minutes him hawing over this tree and then him hawing over this tree. And what you've never done is you've never explored anywhere else. You think that you've spent 2 hours at this location, but it's been that location. You've not gone out and seen different things. And that's a mistake that I used to make years ago is I would walk in and I would especially be walking slow and goofing around, be like, I've been in the woods for hours. I'm probably really far in. And I found this wonderful place and, I'm gonna set up here, and then maybe over here is another good spot. And if the wind comes from this way, I'll do it. And then y'all come to find out that it's like the first good spot off the main road, and everybody and their mother is going to be in there open in the morning. You need to put in time and cover a lot of ground during your scouting time, because that is going to put you further in than the average person if you're hunting on public land. And even if you're hunting on private land, it doesn't hurt to hunt some closer good spots, but really scout it out and look for some of your better spots. So, covering ground number 4, let's move on to number 5, and probably the biggest. The number 5 is learn to get close. And I know that there's going to be a heck of a lot of you out there that say, I'm not going to worry about getting close because I can shoot far. I practice, and I practice hard. I know all the tips and tricks to shooting far. I win all the 3D target tournaments. I can shoot 3.5 miles with my bow. Like, I am the best long-range shooter, period. I get it. You put in the time, you can put arrows where they're supposed to be at a long way, but what you're forgetting is one of the biggest variables in this whole thing is animals move. Animals react to the shot. Animals move naturally. Animals can just be naturally walking around, eating fresh vines and stuff like that, and they just work around and move. The further you are from that animal, the more time it has to either A, react to the sound of your shot, or B, just simply, the grass is better over here. And now they've moved, and they don't have to move very far. If your margin of error at 50 yards, even if it's like this at 50 yards, if you're shooting a group like that at 50 yards, now if that deer decides it's going to move, now all of a sudden you shot it in the guts. And that's if it doesn't even react to the sound of your bow going off. So I know that when you watch television, they're telling you that you should be shooting 80 yards or 100 yards or whatever, and that's how you kill big bucks. But I am also here to tell you that they are selling you a product, and that product is that their bow shoots further, quieter, faster, and further distances than anybody else's bow, arrows, broadheads, or whatever. They're giving you snake oil to give you a false sense of ability in bow hunting, when the reality is if you learn to get close, your margin for error is significantly lower. Now, it's not that you can't shoot them and kill them at further ranges. I absolutely know that. There's no need to get in the comments and tell me those 2 deer that I shot were over 50. I know. You can absolutely do it. But that leads into the second part of number 5. It is that your success will go up. Your recovery rates will go up if you learn to get close, because it trains you to be a better hunter rather than a better shot, if you're following my train of thought here. So we can always work on being a better shot later. We can always focus on being more accurate, learning tips and tricks to maybe shoot a little bit further. But the variable that doesn't change is the fact that the animals move, and you can't train to make that any better. You can't change that. That's a variable that stays very consistent. Now, you might get in a situation where that animal absolutely never moves, and it's perfect, and the arrow sails right in and just dumps in it at 80 yards or 50 yards or 40 yards or even 20 yards. But quite honestly, that variable does change per animal, per species, and you don't have any control over it. But what you do have control of is learning how to get closer. Because the closer you get, the margin of error goes down, and getting closer teaches you to be a better hunter rather than be a better shot. So that's something I preach all the time. Learn to be a better hunter instead of a better shot. Be a better hunter first, a better shot later. You combine the two together and you will kill a stack of animals. I am promising you that. Now, so what distances am I talking about? Well, being a primitive bow hunter, personally, most of my shots are inside 12 yards. Sometimes I stretch them on at 15 yards. Ideally, I like them 8 to 10 yards. Now, does that mean that I just simply can't shoot? Ryan's not accurate. He can't kill deer far. He can't shoot this. Absolutely not. Shoot, I've won tournaments. I've killed deer out to 35 yards before and made a perfect slam dunk heart shot on the dang thing. But the difference is I've learned over a period of time that your margin for error goes down the closer you are, and when you wait for those perfect slam dunk shots and you're in that animal's little comfort zone, it's such a more intimate experience, and it means a heck of a lot more to you, and you learn to become so much more of a hunter by focusing on getting closer to the animals. There's no replacement for that whatsoever. If you learn to get consistently 10 yards from animals, spot and stalk inside of 10 yards on pigs and even occasionally deer. Think about what your success is going to look like later on down the road if you get to a point where now you are really confident and you can even shoot a little bit further. Like, say if I stopped hunting with a primitive bow today, right, and I picked up a compound bow and a release and the sights and the whole 9 yards, right, and say I can consistently probably shoot, I would say the reasonable, I'm not a compound hunter, so I don't really know, but I think the real reliable range on a compound is probably 20 to 30 yards. I think is pretty reliable. If I have learned to get 10 yards from animals on very, very regular basis, how many animals a year do you think, and how big of bucks that I let walk at 20 yards because I don't have a good shot, so I just let them go because I'm exhibiting patience, rolling right on back to number 3. But if I was shooting those compound bows, how many animals a year do you think that I could actually take? A lot. A whole lot. And it's because I've taught myself to be a better hunter and learned to get close to animals. And so if you learn to get close to animals, you also learn animal behavior a lot better, and you start putting yourself in a better position. And once you start learning to do that, once you start learning to really understand animal movement patterns, their behavior, and you start reading the tiny little nuances that make the differences between getting close to animals or not getting close to animals or relying on shooting further, you start finding yourself in situations where now you're seeing animals because you've learned to pick up on all those little tips and tricks that you never learned when you were really far away. So, like, whenever I go hunt public land, I know a ton of people that hunt public land and they'll hunt it for years and maybe kill something, once every 5 or 10 years. And I don't even hunt public land that much anymore, just simply because I'm now in a position in which I'm afforded some opportunities by some very gracious friends that allow me to hunt some pretty decent properties. But before all of this, I hunted public land almost primarily. I had 20 acres of private land that I was allowed to hunt. 20 acres, that's it. That's all I had for years. 20 acres, and then public land. And it taught me to be a better hunter, hunting those, either the small private parcel that didn't have hardly any game on it at all whatsoever, or the public land, which was huge acres, but I had to share it with everybody else, and the game was spooky. But because I learned to be a better hunter, now, even with sticks and rocks, I go on public land and I can kill something every single year. And as a matter of fact, I think it's been like 5 years in a row that I've just killed stuff on public land. And actually some of my bigger animals have been on public land, oddly enough, believe that or not. And it's probably once or twice a year that I'll hunt with something like a flintlock, or very even rarer yet, maybe once every 2 years, I'll hunt with a rifle, like an actual modern rifle. And the days that I take those out, I kill something almost every single time on public land. It's insane. I shot a really nice buck and a really nice hog on public land within 2 days. It's with a flintlock, just simply because I learned these other tips on learning to be patient, get close, and wait for the right shots. And when you learn how to hunt effectively and get close to doing it, you'll become a better hunter, a better bow hunter, a better primitive bow hunter, a better rifle hunter. So I hope that some of these tips helped you out. And hey, catch us on the next adventure.